Hi, very good morning. I'm Dr. Janak Patel, MD physician. Today we'll be discussing on one of the very another interesting topic and you see in your everyday practice, that is cor pulmonale, almost very common. The second name for cor pulmonale is pulmonary heart disease or chronic pulmonary heart disease, meaning the person develops changes in the heart secondary due to respiratory disorders or pulmonary disorders. So we'll be talking on that particular part. So pulmonary heart disease will lead to pulmonary hypertension, and secondary to pulmonary hypertension, person will develop right ventricular failure, or we call congestive cardiac failure. We'll be discussing under the common heading definition, etiology, pathophysiology, clinical features, investigations, differential diagnosis, treatment, and complications. Meaning is very simple. It is enlargement of the right ventricle, or we call right ventricular hypertrophy, with or without failure due to pulmonary artery hypertension. This pulmonary hypertension should be due to structural or functional abnormality of the lung or of chest wall or because of blood vessels, that is artery. It does not include, or we call it excludes, LVF, ischemic heart disease, myocarditis, cardiomyopathy, pericardial disease, valvular heart disease. Meaning this particular changes in a right ventricle or right ventricular failure should not be due to any cardiac etiology like left ventricular failure, ischemic heart disease, myocarditis, cardiomyopathy, pericardial disease, or valvular heart disease. That is called cor pulmonale. There is one word utilized is called chronic cor pulmonale, means hypertrophy and dilatation of right ventricle secondary due to pulmonary hypertension. And this pulmonary hypertension is because of the chronic damage to lung, mainly parenchyma, or because of the chest wall, or because of pulmonary arterial changes. And right ventricle will undergo hypertrophy and dilatation, but maybe with or without right ventricular failure. Mainly we divide into two groups, that is acute and chronic. And sometimes you get an acute exacerbation of respiratory disease leading to acute onset of failure. So it is called acute on chronic. Depending upon the stages wise, you can divide into stage 1, stage 2, stage 3. In stage 1, it is COPD, or we call obstructive or restrictive lung disease. Stage 2 is COPD or restrictive lung disease plus only right ventricular hypertrophy. There is no clinical symptoms and signs of congestive cardiac failure or right ventricular failure. We call compensated. And when there is a clinical symptoms and signs of right ventricular failure, or we call congestive cardiac failure, in presence of respiratory disease, excluding cardiovascular cause for right ventricular failure, we call decompensated stage, or we call stage 3. There are pathophysiological classifications like persistent vasoconstriction, which can occur at high altitude in hyperventilation syndrome, chest deformities, idiopathic pulmonary hypertension. There will be decrease in vascular bed like thromboembolism, emphysema, lung resection, fibrotic lung disease, cystic fibrosis, and obstructive disease of lung vessels like extrinsic compression of the pulmonary vein, fibrosing mediastinitis, adenopathy or tumors, pulmonary veno-occlusive disease, etc. And ideally, a absolutely rare condition, that is Eisenmenger syndrome. Ideally, this is not a cor pulmonale, but in which left to right shunt becomes reversal of the shunt takes place. So now shunt becomes right to left. Then we call that as Eisenmenger syndrome. There is vascular remodeling in primary pulmonary hypertension, secondary pulmonary hypertension, collagen vascular disease, cystic fibrosis, etc. Etiology wise, we already told you acute, chronic, and acute on chronic. Classical example of acute, where a person develops severe ARDS and then goes into acute cor pulmonale, tension pneumothorax, massive pulmonary embolism, multiple pulmonary artery embolism, severe status asthmaticus, traumatic injury to the chest leading to multiple rib fractures and flail chest, and total lung collapse. Maybe because of bronchogenic carcinoma or foreign body, or maybe secondary due to tension pneumothorax, out of which a tension pneumothorax and massive pulmonary embolism comes topmost on the list for acute cor pulmonale. In a chronic cor pulmonale, the most common cause is COPD, we call as a chronic obstructive lung disease, in which we come across chronic bronchitis, emphysema, asthma. Restrictive disease, which we can divide into two big groups, that is intrinsic and extrinsic. In intrinsic variety, pulmonary edema, interstitial lung disease, interstitial pulmonary fibrosis. And in extrinsic variety, chest wall disorders, gross chest wall deformities, thickened pleura, fibrotic pleura, diaphragmatic paralysis, and neuromuscular disorders involving intercostal muscles and diaphragm. And one of the another condition where you can develop chronic cor pulmonale is obstructive sleep apnea. These are all the different conditions which can end up with chronic cor pulmonale, and this is a big list of that chronic cor pulmonale. Hypoxic vasoconstriction, occlusive pulmonary vascular bed, and lung parenchymal disease like chronic bronchitis, COPD, bronchiectasis, fibrosis, cystic fibrosis, pneumoconiosis, sarcoidosis, interstitial pulmonary fibrosis. These are all the conditions which is involving lung parenchyma. This is involving vascular bed, primary pulmonary hypertension, veno-occlusive disease, collagen vascular disease, drug-induced, while hypoxic vasoconstriction, chronic bronchitis, COPD, cystic fibrosis, obesity. We can include obstructive sleep apnea, neuromuscular disorders, chest wall dysfunctions, high altitude, etc. WHO classification wise, a condition which leads to pulmonary hypertension you can call pulmonary arterial hypertension. Then pulmonary hypertension due to lung disease like chronic obstructive lung disease or chronic restrictive lung disease. So we can divide into arterial hypertension and chronic, even thromboembolic phenomena can also lead to pulmonary hypertension. So these are the groups: pulmonary arterial hypertension, veno-occlusive is not included in cor pulmonale. So you can have a persistent primary pulmonary hypertension. You can have a pulmonary hypertension due to chronic lung disease or hypoxia, thromboembolic phenomena, and some of the conditions where still exact pathophysiology and mechanism is not understood. It is multifactorial. So all this at your leisure time you can go through in detail if you are interested. A person who is already having a chronic cor pulmonale, and on the top of that, if he develops acute infection or sudden exposure to pollutants, he can have an acute exacerbation of that particular disease, and person will develop symptom signs of acute cor pulmonale type of symptoms. That is, congestive cardiac failure will be precipitated, compensated stage will become decompensated stage, and that we call as the acute exacerbation of chronic bronchitis or acute exacerbation of COPD. Or if he develops any lung pathophysiology like collapse, pneumothorax, massive pleural effusion, etc., person can have an acute on chronic. Again, person starts smoking or is exposed to pollutants, smokes, allergens, noxious particle, chemical fumes, in presence of chronic bronchitis, emphysema or COPD, likely that person will develop acute on chronic phenomena. What happens in acute? Because of sudden collapse of the lung, either because of pneumothorax or maybe because of obstruction to the main trachea, either because of foreign body or because of, say, malignancy. Foreign body is very common in children. Suddenly lung collapses, artery are also collapsed. There is severe hypoxia. Now, due to occlusion of artery in case of massive pulmonary embolism or because of thrombosis, now artery constricts, goes into spasm because of sudden hypoxia. There will be sudden shoot up of blood pressure, that is increased peripheral vascular resistance in pulmonary artery. Severe shoot up of pulmonary pressure, we call pulmonary arterial hypertension. Right ventricle will find severe afterload, and right ventricle will not be able to compensate that, and right ventricular pressure will be sharply elevated, which will have elevation of pressure in the right atrium again because of increased afterload, and there will be elevation of pressure in superior vena cava and inferior vena cava, and that will end up into what we call as congestive heart failure. Ideally, it is not congestive heart failure, it is called right ventricular failure. Right ventricular failure, or we use the word congestive cardiac failure, the old term. So that is peculiar. As far as development of the pulmonary arterial hypertension is concerned, there is a two-hit therapy, a primary hit and secondary hit. We don't go into detail. We'll be talking of this particular part in pulmonary hypertension chapter. So COPD leads to chronic obstructive lung disease. Pulmonary artery is occluded, increased peripheral vascular resistance, increase in pulmonary blood pressure. Because of increase in pulmonary blood pressure, there is a gradual increase in afterload as far as right ventricle is concerned. So right ventricle undergoes hypertrophy as well as dilatation, and because of that, now there is a increased pressure in right ventricle that will have increased pressure in right atrium, increased pressure in superior vena cava and inferior vena cava, leading to right side heart failure. So this will be the pathophysiology in chronic cor pulmonale. So because of hormonal, mechanical or any other factor, there is a pulmonary endothelial injury, and secondary to pulmonary endothelial injury, there is a vascular scarring, smooth muscle proliferation, sustained pulmonary hypertension. Because of this sustained pulmonary hypertension, there is a right ventricular hypertrophy, because right ventricle will have a increase in afterload, and so right ventricle has to do more work, in that it undergoes hypertrophy or little amount of dilatation, and this we call as a cor pulmonale. And when it undergoes decompensation, we get symptom signs of right-sided heart failure. This will be very common in case of a pulmonary arterial hypertension. This is one simple mechanism which has been also explained, that because of airway obstruction or because of destruction of the alveolar wall, because of airway obstruction you develop hypoventilation, ventilatory coefficient imbalance, and air trapping. And because of alveolar wall destruction, this will happen in emphysema. You will have a PCO2 will be increased, ventilatory coefficient imbalance will take place, air trapping will take place, and this will produce hypoxia with hypercapnia. Because of hypoxia and hypercapnia, you will develop polycythemia because of this hypoxia. That polycythemia can also lead to pulmonary hypertension. Because of air trapping, that also can lead to pulmonary hypertension. And because of hypoxia, you will get a pulmonary vasoconstriction, remodeling of the arteries. And once the remodeling takes place, it is an irreversible process which will produce persistent pulmonary hypertension. Because of persistent pulmonary hypertension, there is an increase afterload on right ventricle, which will result into right ventricular hypertrophy. And as this right ventricular hypertrophy is secondary to lung disease, or we call lung pathophysiology, we call that as a cor pulmonale. Further elevation of pulmonary blood pressure, right ventricular pressure will be elevated. Right ventricular pressure elevation will lead to right atrial pressure elevation, and then person will have a increased pressure in superior vena cava and inferior vena cava, leading to what we call as a right ventricular failure. So this is what you can clearly see. The right ventricular volume, that is dilatation, will take place as well as hypertrophy. So that is secondary due to development of pulmonary hypertension, which is because of basic lung disease. Then we call that as cor pulmonale. And then person goes into right side heart failure, we'll call as a cor pulmonale with right ventricular failure. You can compare this. You see this left ventricular size and right ventricular size. Now almost right ventricular volume has reduced and there's a severe hypertrophy. You can see that this muscle mass is more than left ventricular muscle mass. Here the left ventricular muscle mass is little more than right ventricle capacity, and then you get severe right ventricular hypertrophy that will be very common in chronic cor pulmonale. We'll have 3 stages: stage 1, stage 2, stage 3. In stage 1, the person has got basic lung disease. These stages you will get in a chronic cor pulmonale, not in an acute. On the top of chronic lung disease, now if a person starts developing pulmonary hypertension and there is a gradual right ventricular hypertrophy, we call it stage 2. Yet person has not gone into congestive cardiac failure. Now on the top of that stage 2, if he develops congestive cardiac failure symptoms and signs, now we'll call that as a stage 3, or we'll call cor pulmonale with congestive cardiac failure. And in an acute, person doesn't get a chance to undergo changes in the right ventricle. So person will have an acute lung disease like pneumothorax or massive pulmonary embolism, which will suddenly develop severe pulmonary arterial hypertension. And before the ventricle starts getting compensation, there is decompensation and person goes into acute congestive heart failure. Sorry, not congestive heart failure, right ventricular failure, or we call it as a congestive cardiac failure. We'll call that as acute cor pulmonale. But already if the person is in stage 2, and now on the top of that he develops an acute infection, or he is exposed to pollutants, or he is smoking, or there is another insult to a lung in the form of a lobar pneumonia, or maybe pneumothorax, or massive pleural effusion, or a pulmonary embolism, person will have an acute exacerbation on the top of chronic cor pulmonale, and in that compensated stage will become decompensated. This stage is also called as a compensated cor pulmonale. He will go into decompensated stage. This is called decompensated stage, and that we call as acute on chronic. So acute exacerbation on chronic we call as a decompensation takes place on a presence of compensated cor pulmonale. So in stage 1, there is a chronic disease. Person will have a chronic cough, shortness of breath. Person is a still smoker. He has got history of asthma, past history of tuberculosis, pneumoconiosis, or interstitial pulmonary fibrosis, or he was exposed to pollutants, or person might have a chest deformities, etc. And person will have a constant chronic symptoms like chronic dyspnea, chronic cough, may be productive, may be non-productive, wheezing may be present. Person might have a little amount of retrosternal or substernal pain, easy fatigue, and clinically might have some symptoms and signs of polycythemia in the form of mild cyanosis, particularly central cyanosis. Because of carbon dioxide retention, person can have excessive daytime sleepiness. Some person with obstructive sleep apnea can also develop pulmonary hypertension. And this will be the typical picture what you will come across in a polysomnography. So try to identify obstructive sleep apnea by doing polysomnography. Once from that particular stage he starts developing right ventricular hypertrophy. Now we call that as person is going into stage 2. So now compensatory stage starts. Person will have all those persistent symptoms of stage 1. Plus now he'll start developing cyanosis. There will be symptom signs of respiratory disorders. Now person will have a right ventricular hypertrophy. P2 will be loud. Pulmonary second sound will be loud. There may be right ventricular heave. And at this particular stage, still person does not have symptom signs of congestive cardiac failure. We'll call that stage 2. So in a stage 2, there is a compensated period. There is a chronic lung disease, clinical evidence of chronic pulmonary disease or chest wall deformities, etc. with pulmonary hypertension in the form of a P2 loud, right ventricular hypertrophy in the form of a right ventricular parasternal heave. So this will be the common symptoms. Person will have still persistent dyspnea, weakness, fatigue. Some of the times person with a severe pulmonary hypertension can have syncopal episodes, chest pain. So this will be some of the symptom signs. So you try to look for that. And once the person goes into stage 3, that is decompensated stage, in that stage you start developing JVP elevated, peripheral edema, ascites, hydrothorax, there is a systolic murmur of TR, there is an S3 sound, hepatomegaly, splenomegaly. When you get all these symptoms and signs, we call that person has developed a right ventricular failure. Then we put them into stage 3. So now the person has developed a congestive cardiac failure on the top of right ventricular hypertrophy, secondary due to chronic lung disease. Now we call as a chronic pulmonary with congestive cardiac failure. So this is typical stage 3. So in stage 3 he will have a hepatomegaly, ascites, JVP will be elevated, S3 sound, systolic murmur because of TR, right ventricular hypertrophy signs, etc. So when you get all those findings, you call that as a chronic cor pulmonale with CCF. So this will be some of the symptoms and signs, that is peripheral edema, weight gain, JVP elevated, enlarged liver, retrosternal or substernal pain, palpitation, swelling, edema, dizziness, sometimes even a person gets syncopal episodes. Now what happens in acute cor pulmonale? Sudden severe shortness of breath, acute respiratory symptoms and signs, JVP will be elevated, ECG will show you S1Q3T3 pattern or right bundle branch block. Clinically there will be no evidence of right ventricular hypertrophy. Echo will show you a severe pulmonary hypertension, but right ventricular wall will not be thickened. So there is no evidence of even right ventricular hypertrophy on echo. An X-ray chest may show you tension pneumothorax or pulmonary embolism in the form of a Western hump sign or Westmark sign or Hampton's hump. That may be seen on a plain X-ray, and you can confirm the diagnosis of acute pulmonary embolism by doing pulmonary CT pulmonary angiography. In acute and chronic, person is already having a compensated stage. On the top of that, he develops an acute exacerbation of chronic bronchitis or severe lower respiratory tract infection, or he is exposed to pollutants, and suddenly there is an increase in shortness of breath. Now person has got clinical symptom signs of jugular venous pressure is elevated, hepatomegaly, hepatojugular reflux is positive, ascites, edema, etc. Now we'll say that this is acute and chronic. As far as a diagnosis is concerned, clinically, you have to suspect by taking a good history and examination. We already mentioned before. It should be confirmed by doing an echocardiography. And echocardiography will show you no evidence of pulmonary venous pressure is not elevated. It is less than 15. There is no valvular heart disease. There is no clinical evidence and echocardiography evidence of cardiomyopathy or myocarditis or ischemic heart disease. But pulmonary pressure is elevated. Then to differentiate whether it is because of chronic obstructive disease or restrictive disease, you will have to do pulmonary function test, DLCO, HRCT, ABG, etc. Those investigations should be done to differentiate obstructive, restrictive, severity of the disease. ECG will show you right ventricular hypertrophy, P pulmonale, tachycardia, and in some of the cases you can get even tachyarrhythmias like atrial flutter, atrial fibrillation, secondary due to right atrial enlargement. And in both this investigation, ECG, X-ray chest, echocardiography, there is no clinical evidence of left heart disease. That should be differentiated. And now, to further differentiate between obstructive and restrictive disease, you can go for VQ scan, etc. In very few rare cases, you might require a pulmonary biopsy, lung biopsy. By and large, CT pulmonary angiography is required if you are suspecting pulmonary embolism. Right heart catheterization will be helpful to find out right side pressure changes, that is pulmonary arterial pressure changes, right ventricular pressure, right atrial pressure, etc. So mean pulmonary arterial pressure less than 25 will straightforward rule out, but elevated pulmonary arterial pressure will be in favor of pulmonary hypertension. Then you will have to rule out different causes like HIV, etc. Different causes of pulmonary hypertension. You will have to undergo investigation in detail. And this is one chart which is showing you the risk, low risk, intermediate risk, high risk, how you identify by clinical symptoms and signs, and different tests. By doing what we call as clinical signs of right heart failure, then progress of symptoms, syncopal episodes, WHO functional classifications, 6-minute walking test, cardiopulmonary exercise test, and terminal pro-BNP, then echocardiography, and hemodynamic study by doing a right heart catheterization. After doing all this investigation, you can classify into low risk, intermediate risk, and high risk. At your leisure time, if you are interested, you can just go through. This is what we call as follow-up. This is a baseline investigation. This is after 6 months. This is after 1 year. You try to have a follow-up by doing a medical examinations, ECG, 6-minute walking test, CPAT, echo, basic laboratory, then extended laboratory parameter, blood gas analysis or ABG analysis, and right heart catheterization. Then you can go for how it is progressing. It is worsening or it is improving. And this is all those tests what you do to find out the treatment in a case of a pulmonary arterial hypertension. We will be talking of all those things in a pulmonary hypertension chapter. This is in a person in whom you are suspecting chronic thromboembolic phenomena. Particularly, it is very common in what we call as a deep vein thrombosis. How you approach, that is being given. So we already mentioned all the different investigations, which will include X-ray test, CT, MRI, pulmonary function test, angiography, or you combine CT or MRI with angio to rule out chronic thromboembolism or massive pulmonary embolism, multiple pulmonary embolism you can identify. To find out the severity of effect, ABG to find out hypoxia and hypercapnia, sputum examination to find out infective malignancy, etc. Or lung biopsy in case of interstitial fibrosis, in case of malignancy, in those particular group it will be helpful. ECG, echo and Doppler will be helpful to find out the effect of respiratory disease on cardiovascular system. Right heart catheterization will be helpful to identify the changes in pressure on right side of the heart, that is pulmonary arterial pressure, right ventricular pressure, right atrial pressure. You can go for a pressure studies, etc. All those you can do. You can have ECG, echo, pulmonary function test, radionucleotide ventriculography, MRI, right heart catheterization, lung biopsy. All these are some of the investigation in selective conditions to identify the etiology and severity of the effects. In an X-ray chest, plain X-ray chest, you can sometimes pick up bilateral hydrothorax, right ventricular hypertrophy, and basic lung disease. By lung function test, you can differentiate obstructive and restrictive lung disease, and also you can find out the severity of involvement of the lung. ECG will show you P pulmonale, that is tall P wave in lead 2, very clearly picked up. RVH you can pick up, low voltage, particularly in a COPD. You can have a tachycardia, sometimes you can even have atrial flutter fibrillation. You can rule out ischemic heart disease, left ventricular hypertrophy, which will be usually, if there is a left ventricular hypertrophy, it is not cor pulmonale. Echocardiography will show you all changes in the right ventricle, that is right ventricular hypertrophy, dilatation, right ventricular pressure, and diastolic volume. Also, you can have a clinical evidence of pulmonary hypertension. Echo will also help you to differentiate valvular heart disease, cardiomyopathy, pericardial disease, ischemic heart disease. And we have already told you, right heart catheterization will help you to identify pulmonary hypertension, how severe, etc. And you can combine angio with CT to find out arterial conditions like chronic thromboembolic phenomena, massive pulmonary embolism, multiple pulmonary embolism, etc. So history, physical examination, laboratory parameters, ABG will help you to identify how severe the hypoxia and hypercapnia. BNP and N-terminal pro-BNP will help you to identify the severity of congestive heart failure and presence of heart failure is there or not. These are some of the radiological findings we already mentioned. Particularly Westmark signs and Hampton's hump will help you to identify pulmonary embolism. So changes in a pulmonary artery size will also give you an idea regarding the pulmonary hypertension by X-ray. So there are some diagnostic clue which can be there, which you can go through at your leisure time. So pulmonary function test and X-ray test is a simple non-invasive technique which can give you an idea regarding good number of respiratory condition and effect of respiratory condition on cardiovascular system. ECG and echocardiography will also help you to differentiate what is the effect of lung pathophysiology on heart. On a ECG, we have already mentioned that you will have a right axis deviation, RVH, P pulmonale, low voltage, right bundle branch block, incomplete or complete right bundle branch block, etc. And in case of an acute cor pulmonale, you will have a S1Q3T3 pattern, very characteristic. So that will be very peculiar. This is classical RVH and P pulmonale. This is P pulmonale, and this is a clinical or ECG evidence of what we call as an RVH. You will have a R wave tall, and you will have a S wave in V5, V6, and you will also have a R wave in AVR. This is classical. In AVR, you can see that there is a tall R wave. In V1 also there is a tall R wave, and V5, V6 will have a deep S wave. While in a lead 2, you will have a tall P wave. This is P pulmonale, this is RVH. So P pulmonale and RVH is quite common. In acute cor pulmonale, we already told you S1Q3T3 pattern will be present. Or you might have even a clinical evidence of right bundle branch block. So this is typical S1. This is S wave in lead 1, Q3 and T3 inverted in lead 3. That is characteristic of acute cor pulmonale. On echo, you will have evidence of right ventricular hypertrophy. Clearly you can see right ventricular hypertrophy, right atrial dilatation. Right ventricular hypertrophy is more than LV. Clinically, you can easily identify, and on by echo, you can identify. You can go for MRI. You can go for pulmonary angio, right heart catheterization. These are right heart catheterization. We call Swan-Ganz catheter is utilized. In very few conditions, you require a lung biopsy, particularly interstitial pulmonary fibrosis or pneumoconiosis, or in case of a suspected malignancy. So lung biopsy is required in a very few conditions. Very few laboratory parameter is helpful. Mainly the advantage is taken regarding BNP and pro-BNP to rule out presence of congestive heart failure. Blood urea creatinine is usually done to find out the effect of congestive heart failure on kidney. So abnormal blood urea and creatinine elevation suggests congestive heart failure, and decrease in eGFR also suggests congestive heart failure. In a chronic cor pulmonale, you can have a increase in hematocrit and elevation of hemoglobin because of polycythemia. In liver function test may be abnormal, that is SGPT will be abnormal because of congestive hepatomegaly. These are some of the tests. Electrolyte imbalance you can come across. ABG will give you an idea regarding hypoxia and hypercapnia. BNP we already mentioned. So BNP will be elevated because of renal failure as well as congestive cardiac failure. These are all the different tests which are being done at your leisure time. You can go through. In differential diagnosis, you will have to find out acute versus chronic versus acute on chronic, and all the other causes which can lead to generalized anasarca. And you will have to also differentiate congestive heart failure from chronic cor pulmonale. This is difference between acute and chronic. In acute, onset is sudden, while in chronic it is gradual. In acute, we don't come across RVH, while RVH is a common feature in case of a chronic or pulmonal. Prognosis is very good in acute because if you treat the basic etiology, there is a complete reversal. While in a chronic, it is gradually progressive and there is a poor prognosis. To differentiate between cardiac, congestive cardiac failure and chronic or pulmonal, respiratory system in cardiac, pure cardiac variety will be, lung will be absolutely normal. While here you will have a basic lung disease with RVH. While in a cardiovascular system examination in a cardiac, you will have a basic cardiovascular disease like a valvular heart disease, ischemic heart disease, cardiomyopathy, pericardial disease, etc. While in a chronic or pulmonal, those left-sided heart disease will be absent. You will have only RVH and evidence of congestive cardiac failure. While there will be absence of left ventricular failure signs, cardiomyopathy, valvular heart disease, ischemic heart disease, pericardial disease, all those will be absent. This is edemator stage because of pulmonary edema, central venous pressure elevation, ascites. This will be three findings which you look for in left heart failure, right heart failure, cirrhosis, renal disease, nephrotic syndrome, idiopathic edema, venous insufficiency. At your leisure time, you can go through the difference between all those different conditions for differentiating the three. Very simple. In a right side heart failure, there will be no basal crackles. There will be central venous pressure will be elevated and ascites will be present. While in a left heart failure, basal crackles will be present. Central venous pressure will be variable. Initial stage, it will be normal. Once the central venous pressure starts rising, the person will develop now what we call the congestive heart failure. And there will be no ascites, no edema. While in cirrhosis, renal disease, nephrotic syndrome, idiopathic and venous insufficiency, edema and ascites will be a common symptoms. Central venous pressure in cirrhosis and renal may not be elevated, will be normal. In a what we call as idiopathic edema also it will be normal. We call JVP will be normal. There will be no clinical evidence of left ventricular failure or we call as a pulmonary edema in cirrhosis, renal, nephrotic syndrome or venous insufficiency. Once you confirm the diagnosis of chronic or pulmonal, you have to decrease the right ventricular afterload by reduction in a pulmonary arterial pressure. So you give the treatment to reduce pulmonary arterial pressure, decrease right ventricular pressure, improve contractility of a right ventricular pressure. You can utilize oxygen or nitric oxide, diuretics, inotropic drugs, bronchodilators, sorry, this should be C, bronchodilators. You can use PG inhibitors to decrease the right pulmonary arterial pressure, etc. So these are the basic treatment. So non-pharmacological treatment is oxygen therapy. Person will require, because person is having hypoxia, which is producing pulmonary arterial vasoconstriction. So you give oxygen, which will reduce pulmonary vasoconstriction. So pulmonary peripheral vascular resistance will be reduced and arterial pressure will be reduced. So this is a prime thing which is very, very important. Phlebotomy is usually done in a person with a polycythemia. You can have a positive pressure ventilation. As far as pharmacological therapy is concerned, diuretics. Anticoagulants will be helpful only in case of a chronic pulmonary embolism or chronic thromboembolic phenomena or acute pulmonary embolism. Vasodilator will be also helpful to reduce the pulmonary hypertension. And you can use what we call as a PG inhibitor, prostaglandins inhibitors to reduce pulmonary arterial pressure. So this is oxygen therapy. In pharmacotherapy, diuretics, vasodilators, beta-selective agonists, digoxin, theophylline, that is bronchodilators, and anticoagulants. This is phlebotomy. This is last resort, that is surgical intervention, where you can go for total lung transplant or one side lung transplant, etc. So combining together treatment of congestive cardiac failure, treatment of basic respiratory disease, treatment of precipitating factors, prevention of further damage to the lung by stop smoking, reduce exposure to pollutants, improve lung capacity by regular respiratory exercise, and decrease lung hazards by prevention. So oxygen therapy is very helpful. Diuretics will be helpful. ACE inhibitors is also helpful. Beta blockers are also helpful. And now there are a lot of drugs which are available for reducing pulmonary hypertension. This will be also discussed in a chapter of pulmonary hypertension. There are a lot of drugs. This already we have told you, during acute exacerbation, you will require control of infection, oxygen, control of heart failure, treatment of cardiac arrhythmias, anticoagulation therapy if there is an evidence of thromboembolic phenomena, and prevention. So these are the things which you can do in an acute on chronic. These are preventive measures which you can do. Stop smoking, regular physiotherapy, reduce predisposing factors like repeated respiratory tract infection, inhalation of noxious, smoking, occupational protections, education should be done, environmental health, regular physical exercise, etc. As a complications, there is a very common complication, that is hypoxia with hypercapnia, which will produce respiratory acidosis. Person can develop a shock stage, chronic congestive cardiac failure, which can lead to cardiac cirrhosis. There is increased chance of DIC. There is a chance of development of arrhythmia like atrial flutter fibrillation, which can predispose to thromboembolic phenomena. Person will also have a high chance of gastrointestinal hemorrhage. Person can go into respiratory failure, particularly type 1 respiratory failure. He can also develop hypertensive encephalopathy, or we call carbon dioxide narcosis. Secondary polycythemia and complication due to polycythemia person can have. And invariably, person goes into a chronic stage, and then he will develop a chronic respiratory failure, and person can even succumb. So these are all the complications which can occur because of a cor pulmonale. So these are all those complications we call hypoxia, right heart failure, cardiac arrhythmia, polycythemia, which can end up with strokes, hyperuricemia. You can have a liver failure, kidney failure, syncopal episodes, damage to brain because of hypoxia, carbon dioxide narcosis, all those complications. So cor pulmonale, in an end stage manifestation, you can have a right heart failure. Most important treatment is supportive treatment. There is no cure. Oxygen therapy becomes the mainstay. Diuretic, ACE inhibitor, beta blockers will help. Better drug therapy by reducing the pulmonary artery will be a prime condition, will help to improve the prognosis. But still prognosis remain poor because it is never treated. So prevention, that's why prevention is better than cure. Stop smoking and prevent the damage to the lung. Stop smoking, very, very important. I end my lecture here. I hope this lecture will be very helpful to you, because you will come across in your everyday practice most common disorders, chronic respiratory disorders, ending up with a COPD, and then it ends up into a chronic cor pulmonale. So I think this will be very, very helpful to you. So I end my lecture here.